Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hey everyone. Good afternoon or good evening or maybe good morning. Diba?
Good something. Welcome to
Good
Planted with
something.
Kay and Sai. I'm Kay of Enrooted Love.
Welcome. And I'm Cyril of Cyril Cybernated. Welcome to another episode this week.
Yay! What are we on? Episode 4.
4.
And today we're going to be talking about, good morning, Indonesia. Today we're going to be talking about debunking
Plant myths. This will be interesting, and we got a lot of hi Cesar, hi Henry. We got a lot of interesting information from a lot of you guys. So
yeah.
Let me just start. Maybe a lot of us, when we were starting, even though Google was widely available, I remember back in my childhood, you know how your moms or your grandmas would tell you about these plant hacks, or oh, you have to do this and that, this is the trick to get this to flower. So those are definitely, I feel like everyone has at least their own version of an inherited plant myth from
And
their own family members.
if you have any, you guys comment them here so that we can see them.
Yes.
Because we'd love to, bring them up as we're going along. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Yeah, see, someone from the Philippines, from Batangas. I would like to start with some common plant myths that I saw from the internet, some myths that I am familiar with as well. So the first common one that I think everybody would have heard was, oh, I don't have a green thumb, or I'm someone who has a black thumb. For me, of course there's such a thing as, a green thumbed person. It just, I guess, comes naturally. People would say like, oh, your son, he's so good at planting, like his hands are warm, and then that he can make things grow. But there's no such thing as a black thumb, because definitely all it takes is a little bit of information, educating yourself. Once we know the basics, and it doesn't really take a special skill, it just takes a little understanding of what a certain plant needs. And that's definitely the first step onto getting your own green thumb, be it natural or acquired through experience.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you that I feel like I'm living proof of that. In college, I was a serial orchid killer. And it was because I thought, and we'll get into this a little more later, but all orchids should be watered with ice. Right?
The ice cube question, or the ice cube myth.
But at the time, I didn't know that there were so many orchids. There's so many orchid species. There's so many hybrids. And within the genus, every single orchid, even like say, let's just talk about bulbophyllums, right? One bulbophyllum species will require a completely different set of care and all the other stuff than another kind will. And I didn't comprehend that. So I had everything from your grocery store phalaenopsis to some special dendrobiums, and I was treating them all the same. And at the time, I didn't realize that you just have to approach, you have to research, right? So somebody said on here, research is key, and you're absolutely right. But I think it kind of, brings up a good point too of so if you guys are familiar with my posts, I always include the name of the plant, and not the common name, but the scientific or botanical name. And the reason for that is not to be snobby. I promise you guys, it's not because I'm like, oh, it has to be the botanical name. No, it actually helps so much, at least for me, to know what the botanical name of that specific plant is, so that I can go and research it and, look at where it's endemic and try and find out what their natural environment looks like. So back to the point of green thumb versus black thumb, you're absolutely right. And I 100% agree. There's no such thing as a black thumb. I think if anything, it's just, you know, just being really new to plants and not understanding that every single plant just requires different care. And that's all it is. I think that everyone is fully capable of growing plants as long as you're open to researching. And, you know, you don't have to do it as intensely as, say, you and I do. But yeah, research is key. Knowing the correct identification of your plant will certainly set you on in the right direction, and will keep you as far away from this black thumb mentality or title or label, you know, as possible. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. Now I want to share, I'm a little salty about this, you guys, because I feel like I've just been lied to. But everyone, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree with me on this, but everyone gets sucked in to the plant world because we're told that succulents are super easy to care for.
Oh, I see what you did there. We got sucked in.
We got sucked in. Exactly. But it's so false. Succulents grown indoors is so hard, and it is so easy to kill a succulent indoors, which should not be confused with growing them outdoors, right? Because I feel like growing succulents outdoors is relatively easy because you can forget about them and you're not prone to overwatering them. But, you know, I see these centerpieces meant for like dining tables that are these beautiful succulent arrangements. And I'm like, it's gorgeous, but it's going to die in a week because you're going to put an ice cube in there, or somebody in your house is going to pour their half drunk glass of water in there and it's just going to rot. So yeah, you know, whoever made up this whole succulents are easy. No, they're not. Not if you're trying to grow them as a house plant. And I know, because I refused to grow succulents in the home for so long because I couldn't keep them alive.
Even I, who live in California, who's in a desert or arid region, I can't keep my arrangements indoors, regardless if they're literally beside a window, because it's just not warm enough. The circulation here indoors is just not good enough for them. And the conditions are just really better outside. And
absolutely,
especially those arrangements that are made at the grocery stores. And sometimes they mix tropical plants with succulents. And like, oh, an easy arrangement that will be dead in a week or two, because the tag is never right anyways.
And perhaps if you're just looking at it as purely that, just an arrangement for decor, and you have no expectations of keeping it alive, then okay, that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like we all just get so tricked into thinking succulents are easy to grow indoors, and that's not it at all.
That's true.
Yeah. Let's see, what's another one? So here's one that I think is more of a marketing scheme, if anything. And it's low light tolerant plants. There's no such thing as a low light tolerant plant. If you put a plant in low light, it will just die slower and less obviously. That is the honest truth in it. Will a plant survive in low light? Yes, it will survive. Will it thrive? Absolutely not. Snake plants should not be grown in a windowless bathroom. Like, it's just, unless you have a grow light in there above it, no. Because like, if you, do we have any Floridians down here? You guys grow Sansevieria on the side of the road as outdoor plants. That should tell you what type of light levels they actually need. Low light tolerant is not a thing. Huge X on that one.
And, you know, I've kept my whale fins alive, but they weren't as alive when compared to the whale fins that were growing outside of a hotel plant box. So it's definitely, you know, not true. And another marketing scheme would be like oxygen emitting plants, or plants that will give, or air purifying plants. You probably have to look that up because the NASA studies in the 90s, I believe, the figures that I remember is you probably need to keep at least 12 plants in a square foot for it to do something. And that research was like a controlled environment, and that's not the case in home. It's not a enclosed environment,
Yeah.
which is controlled, so that's another myth. What
It
else? Oh, this one is probably common. People were our elderly um, predecessors told us that elderly gardeners told us like, oh, to add gravel or add stones underneath a pot to improve the drainage. Well, first of all, if your pot already has drainage, I don't think that's necessary. Maybe to weigh it down
Yes.
even more. I tend to do that when I feel like I'm gonna insert a heavy moss pole. I'd probably put heavier medium in there. But or if your pot doesn't have any drainage, then maybe the stones might help, but it doesn't necessarily improve the entire situation, because you have to take into consideration the amount of water that you give, the amount of light that it gets, what type of plant is planted in there. So the word that I'm looking for is like an encompassing rule, like, oh, put gravel on everything just to improve drainage. And I feel like that's the root of all these myths, because either it gets lost in translation or lost in interpretation,
Yeah.
or everything's just generalized, and that's when we screw up. Because knowing what I know now after a few years of having plants, I could see that why these myths could work in certain conditions, but definitely not for all the plants or on whatever growing condition or on whatever time or season it is in the year.
Absolutely. 100% agree. The only times I've ever added gravel or stone to the bottom of a pot was, like you said, if I was trying to weigh it down. But there's a drainage hole if if it's intended for that. And like the few times that I grow things in a pot with a drainage hole. But no, gravel and stone do not improve drainage at the bottom.
Yeah, based on what I read, it actually lessens the space of your plant to actually, for the water to get distributed. So it makes your container smaller and tighter and shorter. Therefore, if you deep water everything, it just gets soaked even more in water instead of improving drainage.
Absolutely. So here's another one. You shouldn't fertilize in the winter. Now okay, so you guys, if you've been following along on the show you know that Sai and I follow the rule of fertilize weekly, meaning at a weak strength more often. For me, as a passive hydro grower, I fertilize all year round because I have to. But with organic media, it is okay to fertilize throughout the winter as well. The biggest thing is just to watch what your plants are doing, right? If it's not pushing growth out one after the other like it would in spring or summer, then bring your dilution up or your concentration down and just feed it just a little bit. But yes, you can absolutely feed your plants in the winter. Those plants you guys get at the nursery that you don't repot and has a ton of osmote at the top? Guess what? It's getting fertilized in the winter. You may not be doing it, but that osmote is still releasing regardless of what the season is. So
yeah,
yes.
Especially the mixtures that have slow release fertilizer. I mean, the fertilizers won't stop opening or getting released. Right. It doesn't know when it's winter, so
exactly. What's another one you've got, Sai?
Oh, the bigger plants, bigger pots. This is a big no-no. I committed this as well. You always pot plants according to the size of the root ball. That's what I follow. Because a reason why your plant isn't growing is because it's stressing too much, trying to cover the area with roots. So it would want to know its territories. And once it's busy putting out more roots first, then it compromises its ability to grow up what's visible on top of the soil. And and these days, I don't really mind if my plants are a little bit root bound, especially if I grow Hoyas, the better. I have
Yeah.
compromised some cuttings because I potted them in bigger containers. So that's just not the way it is. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, just
always go by the size of the root ball.
mm-hmm.
I know, what do I have like pink princess, for example, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
grow roots crazily. So you could have a huge pink princess, but only in a 5-inch pot. And that's
Yeah.
because the root ball just, it doesn't need all that space. Oh, here's a fun one. Misting increases humidity.
Mm-hmm.
It does not, unless you're going to sit there all day and just continue misting continuously, but that's what humidifiers are for, right? No, but I will say, like, if it's something that's part of your routine and you find it therapeutic and it's a way for you to, just connect with your plants, by all means, mist away. But I just don't expect it to raise the humidity. It probably does for about that 1 second, and then it's back to your
Yeah,
ambient humidity.
because I'm guilty of that. I miss not for my plants, but for myself. It's
Yeah.
like my decompressing time in the evening. I miss my Hoopersias. I just like to see them dewy and, looking like you sprayed something, but it doesn't really do anything for them. Actually, I've even noticed that it sometimes increases the chances of your plants getting sick because, fungus, soil, or whatever particles are in the air, if you miss them and they get stuck on the leaves, and it will probably compromise the health of your plants. So you also have to be careful because I've also done it. I'm sure a lot of us committed the same mistake. But
absolutely.
missed according to your leisure, then by all means, join me as I miss every night.
There you go. You should start a hashtag with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so here's one that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Watering orchids with ice cubes. Don't do it. Just think, where are orchids endemic? Are there fairies in the jungle passing out ice cubes to all the... No. Like, what? No, it doesn't make sense. Even my mom, like, she used to tell me for like her house plants, she's like, oh yeah, just stick 3 ice cubes every week and you'll be fine. And I did that because I didn't know any better. And some people, they will swear by it. And if it works for you, then you're lucky.
Good.
Your conditions probably allow for that to work. But no, there are no ice cubes in the tropics, the subtropics, not even in the cloud forests. There are no ice cubes.
I find it really challenging, though, to remember, like, oh, this plant only needs 2 ice cubes a week. Like, do you have a bucket of ice cubes that you distribute? Because I don't know, I feel like it also stresses the plant because of the sudden change in temperature. I've also heard some myths about, oh, you're only supposed to water in the evening or never water midday during the peak of the heat. Those are myths. Primarily, well, what I've read is because it's still better to get water than not be watered at all. I personally water whenever I remember, all throughout the day, or whenever time permits for me to do so. And I guess it's better for you to water before it gets hot because, that way your plant is equipped and hydrated before it gets exposed to, what's gonna happen later that day. But getting watered regardless of what time of the day is still better than not being watered at all, especially if there's a heat wave going on. So I feel like that myth is definitely not helpful, especially for people who are busy. Like, oh my God, my only available time is in the evening.
Right before bed.
But knowing that myth, I'm like, okay, I can't water. So maybe before I go to work, that's when I water the plants. No, that's just not practical and no.
But you know what would solve this problem, though, is researching what plant you have, having the correct medium for it. If your plant is potted in the correct media, I'm talking organic here, like say if it's an
Mm-hmm.
anthurium and it's nice and chunky and retains just enough water, if you water it, if you water at midnight, it'll be fine. But if you have it in something that's like, that's not permissible to that plant and it's just like super dense and is going to choke it out, then yes, you can expect it to rot
Mm-hmm.
if you water in the middle of the night where there's no sunlight and the plant isn't, you know,
Mm-hmm.
processing the water to photosynthesize. Um, but you know, it's all just conditional in my opinion. Oh, so here's a funny story that was shared.
Mm-hmm.
So myth, yes, actually, I think there's more fact to this, if anything. But
Mm-hmm.
cold stressing certain plants, particularly succulents, will encourage them to have brighter colors. And it works for some, it doesn't work for others. But so this person asked to remain anonymous, but
Mm-hmm.
so in order to cold stress some of their succulents, they put them in the fridge to kind of cold stress them, which I can understand, right? Because we are told sometimes with like bulbs, like
Mm-hmm.
perennial bulbs, sometimes
Mm-hmm. They freeze it.
they need that cold period. I don't know what it's called. I'm not an outdoor gardener really.
Mm-hmm.
And so you stick them in the fridge and they'll get that winter feel or whatever. So anyways, this person put succulents in the fridge to try and encourage the color for cold stress, and it did not work out.
Oh, I'm sure
So
there was some color, maybe some browns or black
browns, yeah,
or purple.
but perhaps. So cold stressing with the fridge does not work. So we have time for one more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably my favorite one. And it's a really great way for us to close, I think. But
Yes, I agree.
this belief that there is only one way to do things is completely false. It's absolutely false. If someone says that this is the way you should be doing it, no, you know, take what they're sharing with you and try and learn from it. But that is
Mm-hmm.
not the only one way to do it. Everybody's home environments are different, and you know, we each will find a way that works for us. The actual correct way, I think, to address that would be there is only one right way to do it, and that's what works for you individually.
Mm-hmm.
This is my take on
Agree.
it. But
I
this
agree.
was
And
fun.
I think that, yeah, and I think that encompasses, you know, everything when it comes to plant care. We see
Mm-hmm.
all these resources. We have our plant influencers. We have all these YouTube videos, the care videos. But all we have to do is just really try it for ourselves and see if it works. If not, then time to move on to the next theory or time to move on to a better option or a better strategy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely no one way. And the only way for you to find out is if you try it because you're the
Right.
one there in your
Exactly.
location, your personality as a plant parent. So yeah, that's what would cap our episode for this week. I hope
Yeah.
you guys learned a lot because it was really fun to talk about the bizarre myths and also the common ones that we've heard all throughout our plant journey. No judgment here, but it's more of like educational, and I just wanted to share our point of views.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you're team replay,
Yes,
share
if you're a team
your
replay.
favorite plant myths in the comments below. All right. Good night,
Yes.
guys.
Good night. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.